I've had what I would describe as two shatterings in my life, and I've talked about them. The earliest one was in the 1960s, and I've described the LSD trip I had, in which everything I knew about life up to that moment was completely blown apart, and a completely different world presented itself, in a world that I had never imagined, something bigger, more unknowable, certainly not a world that was well described by our culture, but it did seem to be described by Eastern cultures. I guess it was a mystical tradition that had an extraordinary set of teachings, rules, understandings, philosophies. And so I let go of my very limited world picture from preceding 1965, and I entered into an exploration of the larger universe as taught in other cultures, and ultimately I discovered even in Western culture through the mystical traditions. And it was extremely meaningful. I found my teacher, Rudy, who was able to integrate and interweave all of these Eastern teachings into a very Western perspective, into the immediacy of day-to-day living. Told me my spiritual life was my daily life, and I came to really see that as true. And I had a very long unfolding journey, ending in what one calls awakening or enlightenment, which, sounds very pontifical to talk about and kind of absurd on some level, but the realization that everything known by Bruce was no longer the true picture, that there was no Bruce-centric reality. There was a world beyond that, and there was no person perceiving it so much as there was the thing itself. And I have spent the last however many years, 6 or so many years, discovering the unfolding of that other awareness, that awareness of being that is not personal, that is something much bigger and has so much to teach. I actually thought awakening was a final moment, and of course I've described this to all of you. It's not the final anything. It's a new levels of funny word, but it's a new aspect of knowing. And that was working very well. Everything was working very well until about 2 months ago, and forgive me for being very worldly and political, but this Donald Trump thing happened. And that was my second shattering, although I didn't understand it as that. But it has completely upended everything in the most wonderful way. I didn't know it was wonderful, and the last 2 months I haven't talked about it as wonderful. I've talked about it as very destabilizing and very uncomfortable. Certainly created a lot of uncertainty and lack of safety and all of these things that come about in shatterings. But I'm watching it happen. I'm watching it extrapolate itself into something really big. And it's clearly not happening to Bruce, it's happening to everybody. And that's really like, oh, this is worldwide. This is communal. This unfolding, which was something that was happening in the universe that I knew of through Bruce, is now happening everywhere. How big it is, how fundamental it is, how absolute it is, I have no idea. I have no idea. But I'll tell you what it did for me, which I think is really a gift, and that is it took away everything. Everything I knew for certain. Everything I thought, believed, everything that the mystical tradition had given me as a foundational element, as a new sense of how the world worked, All of that has gone, gone, gone. And I know absolutely nothing. None of the rules, none of the understandings, none of the groundwork, none of the plans, none of the layout of the universe speaks to me at all. It's like, wow. It's not knowable. It's not comprehensible. It's not graspable on any level. And that is something I've always known. But now, it's true. It's got a truth to it. It's not a truth that is fundamental truth, because I don't know what that means. But this moment I realize that sort of everybody is beginning to pick up on this larger reality that we don't know. And it's rather discomforting and beautiful at the same time. And I guess those of you who've been listening to me talk the last 2 months probably didn't imagine I would find at any point the beauty in all of this. But I have got to say, this has proven to be, proven is a past tense, and I have to say, move it into present tense, it is proving to be very unexpected and liberating. None of us knows anything. None of us. And yet, here we are sharing this unknowable space and creating certain kinds of collective understandings and rules and procedures about how to behave in this space, and they're all fairly good procedures. Love one another, treat your neighbor as yourself, certain kinds of rules that sort of make sense. And we're watching those upended as well. We're watching things really flying around. And it's like, what does that mean? And then, yesterday was a really interesting day. Yesterday, and I guess the day before, the inauguration of, quote unquote, a new era. Truly a new era. An era in which we, as a collective society and as individuals in that collective society, entered history in a way that we have never entered history before. History has always been a kind of through line, but not for everybody. And every so often, history shoots upward, downward. It has an enormous disruption, and it changes the rules. We have entered that. And we can collectively try to understand what to do about it, although we're starting to see how uncollected we are. We're so divided in so many ways. But there was this extraordinary expression of one point of view at the inauguration of what the world looks like to our new president. Pretty dark universe. And then there was this expression yesterday of a new kind of gathering, a new kind of solidarity of millions of women particularly, but people gathering together to say we have a different viewpoint. We have an energized sense of what can be and might be and should be perhaps in the world. And it was very beautiful. It was really, for me, I can only talk about the emotionality that I experienced watching all of this. And I wasn't even going to watch, but I just found myself drawn to the incredible uprising of communal energy. It's really interesting, this idea that bodhisattvas have, when they have awakened and realized what is and who they are and what all this is, and they have the potential for liberation, for the release from samsara, the entry into nirvana, and they choose not to. And they choose to come back here to share their wisdom. And they choose to come back to share their wisdom because there is a kind of underlying sense that until everybody is liberated, nobody is liberated. To liberate yourself is possible. You can wake up and realize, oh, I get it. You don't that you know what you get, but you get it. You sense the totality. You are the totality. And then you realize as I've described this in recent talks, that rather than relieve yourself of suffering and the pain of existence, you suddenly are much more tuned and aware of suffering in the universe. You're not as wrapped up in it and blinded by it, but you are definitely feeling it. You definitely experience the suffering of what we might call mankind or existence itself. It is full of struggle. And whereas people look to freedom and liberation from awakening enlightenment as though, oh, thank God you'll be free of that, it's really not like that at all. You're not free of it, you're one with it. That's the difference. You're one with it. You're not separate from it, you are it. What does that mean? I can't answer that question, except it plays out on the stage of the being that is being experienced from this living creature that I know myself to be. It's an amazing, amazing awareness. And it was, for the last, up until 2 months ago, a relatively private, I don't mean private meaning Bruce, but private meaning I could see the world not seeing itself, not aware of itself. And then 2 months ago, it was like, poof, a new awareness started to take over. A new way of seeing. Not comfortable, fearful for some people, insecure, uncertain, all of that. But as we have all been taught along the way, there is no certainty, ever. There is no safety, really, ever. We all have limited duration in the bodily sense. So all of those things which are true are now becoming like, really true. Collectively true. And there's a value in that because we are marching much more to the sound of, if not the same drummer, because we're all hearing different things, but we're marching to this awareness of our being in life, our being in history, our being alive, our being moved to act on some level, on the benefit, for the benefit of the larger whole. It's a rather beautiful thing, however it ends up. Who knows where everything ends up. But what's going on right now is a kind of soulful upheaval. And there are many people who I'm sure still are, anxiety-ridden and fearful and stressed and having a hard time, and what can I do to change it, and how can I get back to safety, and how can I get back to protection? That's the human ride. Most people are on that ride. But it's okay. It's okay. Because it's the natural human response to what's going on. And what's a natural human response is the response. You can't ignore or deny it. It's what happens. The most amazing thing for me has been watching my own personal drama, if you will, in the middle of all this. I was shocked to have personal reaction. I was shocked to find myself so unhappy and so uncertain and so worried about the world I lived in. And of course, you all know I have grandchildren, so there's a real projection of tenderness about the world they're going to grow up in, and I have to say collectively, the world all these children are going to grow up in. There's a real feeling for that. And I felt really, in a way, that I had, in my sense of struggle and suffering and unhappiness, betrayed my own spiritual practice, because how could I be feeling all these things and still talk to you guys? How could I try to share something where I was really feeling under the gun? And so all I could do was talk honestly about what I was going through, which is what I'm continuing to do. And what's happening for me, and maybe for you or others, is the turning of a corner. Whether it is the ultimate corner or it's just a twist in the big loops, series of loops that we're all going through, I can't tell you. But I will tell you this. The last 50 years have been defined by what we might call a spiritual journey. It had the name spiritual, although if you asked me to say what spiritual was right now, I couldn't tell you. But I called it a spiritual journey because it didn't feel material. It didn't feel just about the day-to-day life of a person. It felt like something so much bigger and collective and transcendent of the world itself. But what's happened to me now is that the word spiritual has evaporated for me as defining anything. That the idea that you're on a spiritual journey is just another roadmap to make you feel comfortable. That philosophy and theory and theology and all of that stuff that we hold on to, that we explicate, that we try to grasp, that we try to break it down into, Kashmir Shaivism and Buddhism and Hinduism and you name it. All these things that we can look at as going, this defines it, this is the roadmap, this is how it works. All of that has gone for me. Completely gone. And for Buddha too, I think. Buddha said, if you meet the Buddha on the road, maybe he didn't say it, but Buddhists have said it. If you meet Buddha on the road, kill him. And they say that for a very important reason. Because once you've committed to Buddhism, you're lost. Once you commit to somebody else's path, even the highest path there is, you're lost. There is no other path for you than yours. There is no other path. And as long as you think the guideposts that you're being given by a teacher are the path, you're wrong. You're completely wrong. I will tell you, the best thing that a teacher can do is point you in a direction. In a direction. And I will even be very specific with that. The direction a teacher can point you in is this direction. Inward. Into yourself. Into you. Into your heart. Into your core being. Into the core curriculum of human experience, which resides in your, I'll call it the heart chakra, but it resides within you, and it is tangible and knowable and experiential if you will sit still long enough to find it. If you will choose regularly with some discipline to go inward rather than outward, to trust the inner journey as much as or more than the outer journey, to find that the words that arise within you are as vibrant and vital as the words that somebody speaks to you from the outside. Everything external to you is temporal, temporary, and finite, and it will all evaporate. I can't explain to you what will happen inside. I don't really know. I get the feeling that I am in touch with something that has a timelessness to it. I will find out as we will all find out. It feels infinite right now. I'm in a body, I'm in a mind, I'm in a physical form, but in that physical form, this thing feels transcendent, vast. It moves out way beyond my physical body. It fills time and space and goes beyond time and space. I know I am experiencing that. And the journey in is a journey into something oceanic and remarkable and wise, knowledgeable and directive, and it gives you a roadmap, if you will. It's not a roadmap that shows you everything. It's a roadmap that says, turn here, now, listen, stop, go, you're okay, now. No. Yes. It's kind of all it does. And it does it without words. So you hear this thing inside you that, I call it the guidance system. The internal guidance system. We all have it. Every human being has it, but very few people bother to find it. For a lot of reasons. One, we are so outer-directed. We're so involved in being educated. We're so involved in the libraries of the universe that have all the wisdom stored in them. But trust me, all of that wisdom is trying to teach you one thing. Go back. In. Go in. That's where you came from. Go in. Go into the place of wisdom, into the place of knowing and discover that knowing is not a held, grasped experience. It is a living awareness. It has a kind of knowledge that isn't based on anything other than the truth of that moment. And the next moment it will be other. So you can't go in with the roadmap, you can't go in with a book taking notes. It doesn't make sense. You can only go in and say, I am here. I am. You can go in and say thank you. You can go in and bow down, literally. Bow down. You can go in and feel the connection to yourself, to your own being, or to being itself. It's such an exquisite journey into what and who you are. And at this point in time, I can't call it spiritual. I can't give it a name. I can't call it anything. It is the nameless unknown. It is the mystery of mysteries. Right now, that mystery has within it something remarkable. It's a word that has come up recently for me. It's an ancient teaching. And it's something that reverberates into life itself. It fills our daily life. And I'm going to tell you the word. I used to use, up until a week or so ago, the word presence, which is a great word, and I love it. But this is another word that I remember hearing early in my spiritual journey, and it's a really interesting word. It's called suchness. Suchness. There is a suchness to our moment-to-moment reality that is indescribable, defining, alerting, affirming being. And we all experience it all day long. It's the most invisible part of our life, the suchness of our life. And when you have it, you don't know it. When it evaporates or goes away, which occasionally it does, boy oh boy do you miss it. That is the real disconnect. It's despair. It's the worst of the worst, not to feel the suchness of being. The suchness of being is the interconnected knowing that we all share. It is the most beautiful, unrecognizable, unspoken reality that we have this thing that we're all operating in, this suchness that is so lovely and affirming and connected. The doorway to suchness and awareness of suchness is inside. The experience of suchness is just go through your day. Go through your day. You're experiencing it all the time. It's the most remarkable glue that holds us all together. I have, in the last weeks, arrived at this expression of suchness. And I have so much gratitude for it, and so much love for it, and so much gratitude to share it with you guys and anybody else I'm with. I have to say, there aren't many people where you can have enough of a dialogue to go deep into an expression of what this is, but you can sit with people. I was at a dinner party last night. My oldest friend Larry turned 75 and had a beautiful party, and everybody was together. And like all dinner parties, there's no time to have a dialogue with anybody that goes anywhere. So it's all totally superficial. How are you? What's up? What's going on? You know, that kind of thing. And nobody knows what to answer even. But underlying that superficiality was suchness. And so I just related to that. I just went, wow, I'm being with all of these people. And even though the dialogue didn't go anywhere, suchness pervaded the whole space. And I walked away going, this is remarkable. And I'll tell you something about suchness, and even about reality, that I've come to know, and which you all know but don't always necessarily articulate. It's beautiful and ugly. It's all polarities and all dualities, and they're all happening at the same time. All at the same time. And everybody that I know in their life in the roadmap of outer life is everyone's aiming at happiness. Everyone's aiming at contentment, aiming at feeling safe, at having gotten it, having won the game, whatever it is that we're all motivated to do. Everybody's on this journey to get somewhere, and it's so extraordinary to me that there's nowhere to get. Now, this is an old idea in spiritual circles, in non-duality, in Advaita teachings, and there is this incredible sense that you are already that. And that feeling is so exquisite, but it is also, I always call it the soup, because it's got millions of flavors, millions of flavors. It's not all happy. It's not all sad. It's got different configurations, and sometimes you get a bite of really hot, spicy, and your whole head goes on fire. Sometimes it's really sweet, and it's like, oh my God, that was good, and you can't even find that piece again in the soup, but you had it, and you have this wonderful melange of tastes and feelings and experiences, all happening at the same time. That is life. That is suchness. It's not that you get one thing and hold it, because you cannot get one thing and hold it. You just live. And it's the learning to take it all in and accepting it and allowing it to be and saying yes to what is. And that's the core teaching of everybody in the non-dual realm. The teaching is just accept what is. So, again, the pointing of directionality in teaching is, you might say, toward acceptance, but it's not acceptance out there, it's acceptance from within here, and that direction allows for a kind of embrace that you'll never get externally. This one just goes like that. You can't even articulate it, because the articulation gets lost. It stops everything in its tracks. The reality of embracing life is a living presence or suchness. And that's what we're doing. And at this point in time, as a teacher, I can only say we're into something really big right now. I don't know where it's going to go. Nobody does. I love that we don't know where it's going to go. I don't know where the next second's going to go, and that for me is a total truth that wasn't always there before. I don't know anything. That's an even bigger truth. I don't know anything. But I am. I am. And that's a kind of knowing that isn't about something, it's just is. That's what we're all finding our way into. We may go into it eyes wide open, we may back into it through the, throughout, without checking where we're going, There's a million ways to get to where you are. And that's what we're all finding. And all I can tell you is, when you come here, for approximately 1 hour, we sit in a space of not knowing, not articulating, not trying, hopefully, just being, and that weaves itself into the fabric of your life, and it will start to pervade the space you live in and give you a kind of yes to what is. So, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to this yet again. And like I say, if you don't show up next week, it's fine, because I've said it all. So you got it. You got the message. Done. I love you. That's probably the biggest message. And I'm grateful. Any questions? Okay. Is that almost a question? That was a scratch. Okay. Thank you guys. Thanks for coming.